Okay, so time for some more Q's and hopefully A's. The first one. Whenever I have a big decision to make, I'm concerting with my mum, I guess, most of the time she gives me good advice, but I also feel like she kind of dictates my life. How do I take care of this feeling? Well, the difficulty with one of the many difficulties of relationships between parents and children is that they change over time. If you make a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner, then the nature of the relationship is more or less clear cut, and it doesn't change significantly for the most part. But we start off as babies in our mother's arm, or we start off before that, inside their bodies. And when we're young, we're completely helpless. If we didn't have our parents, we would quite simply die. So we owe our lives to parents in so many ways. And when we're young, then they have that right, they have that duty and responsibility to run our lives for us in many areas, because we simply not up to it, we can't do it. But then in teenage years, everything starts to change, and we change from children to adults, and that's when the stress usually starts to appear, because the parent can't help feeling some nostalgia for the child we used to be, and we'll often feel that the child is trying to grow up too quickly, whereas the child or the adolescent will feel like, why is mom or dad always treating me like a kid? So both sides feel that the other side doesn't really understand them, and this is a sort of classic cause of small conflicts in family life. But first of all, you're not starting off with a blank slate. You're starting off conferring with someone who has for many years had absolute say over your decisions. And if it's your mum, it's not easy for her to switch from that position of power to someone who's consulting or giving advice like a good friend. And the boundaries are shifting all the time. So, apart from the particular matters and decisions that are being talked through, it's good to talk through this, with your mum, about the need you feel to be able to have some autonomy, and how much you appreciate the feedback and the advice that she gives, but saying that I'm at that position in my life now where I need to take responsibility for my actions more, and there will be some times when I don't follow your advice, but I want you to understand that this is not because I don't respect you or respect your judgment, but sometimes I just have to try stuff out. It's not like I'm moving away from you, and this is like the first step to completely ignoring you. You know how much I value and appreciate all that you give me and all the advice you give, but I do need now, I feel, to be a little bit more independent, and then you can talk about how that works out in specific details. But I think that the main thing is to reassure your mother that, one, that you're not rejecting her, or you're not dismissing her wisdom and her advice and her expression of love for you, because that's basically what it is. Nevertheless, you have to be able to spread your wings a little bit and even make mistakes. And this is the most difficult thing, I think, for a parent, is to see how important it is for their children to make mistakes. Not really big mistakes, but small mistakes where there's still a safety net there. And that's something you have to talk through with her. What is the Buddhist view on tattoos? I'm not sure there is a kind of a doctrine on tattoos. It's like personal beautification, or in the old days, men would have tattoos for some kind of protection. So there was a kind of a sayasat dimension to it in Thailand, at least. In northeast Thailand, where I spent so many years, some of the old men would have the tattoos all up their legs and on their arms and their backs, with all these mystical diagrams and yan. And they would say, if you didn't, having all these tattoos was a proof that you were tough. And he said, very hard to attract a young woman if you didn't have tattoos. This is the proof, like I'm a real man, So tattoos have like symbolic meaning. It's like what you read into them. So there's this difference between having all these kind of traditional yan on your body for protection, or because it's part of a culture and part of an inheritance, like with Maori people or many other people in the world. And then the idea of tattoo as like self-expression, or to record important events and relationships in my life and make your body like kind of a map of your personal history. So it depends, doesn't it? And why? But if you have any intention of becoming a monk, I would suggest don't have tattoos on your right arm. That would be probably my view on this. It's not a good look, and I'm going to ask the younger generation of monks. ท่านมหาการมีความคิดเห็นยังไงเกี่ยวกับการสักลายมีเรารุ่นเก่าแล้วเอารุ่นใหม่ต่อมั่ง
ขอโอกาสครับคือสักลายนี่คือเป็นลายแบบยันหรือว่าลายแบบทั่วไปครับท่านอาจารย์
ทั้งสองอย่างก็ได้ภาษาอังกฤษด้วยนะภาษาไทยก็ได้
ภาษาไทยนะครับ
ภาษาไทย
แล้วก็เคยเห็นว่าถ้าเป็นเรื่องของยันเนี่ยบางทีมันก็เป็นเรื่องการย่อหัวข้อของธรรมะบางอย่างบางเคยเห็นที่มันเป็นยันแค่ว่าทุสะนิมะอย่างเงี้ยแล้วเขาก็วาดเป็นสี่เหลี่ยมแต่มันมาจากอริยสัจสี่คือทุกข์สมุทัยนิโรธมรรคคือบางทีมันก็ทำเป็นเชิงสัญลักษณ์การเตือนมองในมุมหนึ่งก็เหมือนเรามองไปที่เสื้อที่โยมที่ถ่ายรูปนะก็มีในมือท่านอาจารย์ธรรมะนำสมัยมองปุ๊บมันก็เตือนว่าเรารู้อะไรเกี่ยวกับธรรมะนำสมัยธรรมนำสมัยอย่างเงี้ยอันนั้นปุ๊บตอนที่เขาจะสักเนี่ยเขาก็ไปเลือกลายแล้วว่าเขาจะเอาลายไหนมันก็มีเหตุผลในการเลือกของเขาส่วนที่เป็นแฟชั่นเขาก็ชอบอย่างนั้นเขาก็สักไปให้อยู่ อยู่บนตัวเขาจริงๆก็เหมือนกับว่าเป็นในมองในมุมหนึ่งคล้ายๆก็ว่าเป็นสิทธิ์ส่วนบุคคลที่ว่าจะเขียนอะไรลงไปในร่างกายของเรา แต่บางทีก็ต้องนึกถึงตอนที่เราเปลี่ยนใจเพราะว่าใจเรามันไม่ได้มีความคิดความเห็นอย่างนั้นไปตลอดวันหนึ่งมันเกิดอยากจะเปลี่ยนขึ้นมาอาตมาเคยเจอพระรูปหนึ่งเขาสักที่ตรงนี้ว่าเขียนว่ารักแป้ง ทีนี้รักแป้งครับตอนที่เขาจะไปจีบคนหนึ่งแต่เขาตอนที่เขามาเจอกันจริงๆเขาปรากฏว่าคนที่ชื่อแป้งนี่เขาไม่ใช่ผู้หญิง ก็เลยแล้วเขาก็เลยยังไม่ได้เอาออกมันก็อยู่อย่างนั้นวันเวลาก็เปลี่ยนไปแล้วแต่ว่ามันก็เป็นเรื่องตลกดีหรือว่ายังมีพระศรีลังการูปหนึ่งที่อยู่ที่เมตตาคิรีท่านก็จะมีแผลเป็นอยู่ตรงที่ไหล่ด้านขวาท่านต้องไปเลเซอร์ที่ท่านสักไว้ออกเพราะที่ศรีลังกาเนี่ยถ้ามีรอยสักนี่เขาจะไม่ให้บวชนั้นมันก็มีผลกระทบเหมือนกันนั้นการที่จะทำอะไรเลือกทำอะไรก็ต้องตัดสินใจให้ดีครับ
ขอบคุณครับ next question how to stop people pleasing and caring too much of what people think yeah I have a little bit of a quarrel with this word people pleasing it's one of these kind of cynical snarky English phrases and I think it's used unfairly. I mean, I think it's quite admirable, people who like to make other people happy or do things for other people. And to make that seem like a weakness or some kind of something to be made fun of or criticized or seen to be some kind of kilesa, I don't agree with it. If it's compulsive, I mean, I think this is, the idea behind it. You feel so insecure that always having to sort of looking around you all the time is everybody like me and what can I do to make myself more secure in this company? So if it's that kind of neurotic level, then that's something else. But I think people are accused of being sort of people pleasing as if it's this kind of a bad thing. And it's not necessarily. It's when it becomes a unconscious, neurotic kind of default habit that it's a problem. In Buddhism, in Buddhist teaching, then we're the more you understand yourself, the more you understand other people, the more you're comfortable with yourself, the more you be comfortable with other people. The less you feel you have to prove, and this I think that one of the teachings that's important is of what we call the 8 worldly winds, and of praise and blame, and status and loss of status, and gain and loss, and praise and criticism. And reflecting on this teaching that there's nowhere in the world where there's no way that you can live your life, no matter how good, how impeccable, how wise, how smart you are, that you will be free of criticism. It just doesn't work. Let's say you, for instance, you create an incredible work of art, a masterpiece of art, the great movie, the novel of the 21st century, or an absolutely brilliant piece of work. But what you find is there are so many literary critics, and after a while, everyone else has already written about how great this is, so how are you going to get someone to read your piece? Well, you have to say something negative about it, because then, oh, that's interesting. Everyone else says it's so good, and this person says, it's not really. So this is just the way the market works and the way society works, that even if something is brilliant and impeccable, even just merely for commercial reasons, there will be someone who criticizes it. But even if it is really great, it's not like 100 out of 100 people will like it. You know, you have something you think, how could anybody possibly not think this was brilliant? You have a piece of music or a book, you know, you need to read this, listen to this, you know, and people say, yeah, it's quite good, you know. So people's likes and dislikes and views and opinions are all different. I have this teaching I give about when you do something good, you know, then deep inside us we have this kind of belief that there's a kind of like a divine kind of balance, and basically if you do something good, you should receive praise for that. You shouldn't be criticized for that. And if you are, there's something wrong. It shouldn't be like this. But I would say that if you do something good, which comes to the eyes of other people, there will be at least 5 groups of people. Let's call them A, B, C, D, E. Group A, people who will praise you with a genuine appreciation. That's Group A, quite a small group. Group B, people who will praise you because they want something from you. They try to flatter you. Group C, people who don't see what all the fuss is about. Group D, people who are jealous. Group E, people who are upset or angry because what you've done now makes it more difficult for them, and maybe like cut bombriota, you know, something like that. So if you recognize every time you do something good, you know, prepare yourself for Group A, B, C, D, and E. Don't think there should only be Group A. There will be some A's and some B's who try to flatter you, a lot of C's probably who are not interested. There'll be a group of D's who are jealous and a group of E's that are upset. And that's the world we live in. It's like this. So constantly coming back, yeah, it's like this. The world's like this. And even if you try to make yourself popular with everyone, it's not going to work. And the very effort to make yourself popular and liked actually turns people against you, because it's like feels a bit creepy. Like it's like my kamachat, you know. It's like so. Middle way, tang sai klang, is like you don't want to be completely indifferent to what everybody, how people react to you, because there's a lot of feedback and a lot of useful information there that gives you some reflection on how you're behaving, how well you're behaving. But you don't want to go to the other extreme and constantly be crippled by this sense of being looked at all the time and what do people think of me and what do, you know, just have a sense for what you think is right and good, and just stick with that. And I think you'll be all right. How do I know if I'm being too judgmental? Okay, so judgmental is another one of these words. So I think it's who can define judgmental for me? What does it mean? What does it mean to be judgmental?
How you view someone based on their beliefs.
Sorry?
How you view someone based on their beliefs.
Based on
Their doings.
their doings. Well, you see, that for me would be more using good judgment. So I think there's a distinction to be made against making judgments and being judgmental. And my understanding, at least, of what judgmental means is that you have your kind of ideas and your values and your standards, and then you make everyone else try, you know, fit into those categories. You judge them according to your ideas and your values, and you don't open yourself up to other ideas and other standards. But so it's I think in everyday Thai, you know, if we would just say like "Yaduan Sarup," that, you know, that's basically what being judgmental means. Like "Duan Sarup," you know, you just categorize, oh, he's just this or she's just that. You know, you judge them just like that on maybe it's because of their religion or the color of their skin or the way they're dressed, or this instant dismissal of someone because of some external sign, external symbol. So that's kind of shallow and often causes a lot of conflicts. But that doesn't mean that you can't judge somebody. And I would say, like, people's actions, somebody, if somebody says they'll meet you at midday, shopping mall somewhere, and they arrive at midday midday and they're drunk or something, I think you can make certain judgments about that person, at least tentative judgments about how seriously someone takes their commitments. So it's not like a once and for all judgment, like a judge in a courtroom, but you have to be able to assess people from their conduct, but you don't dismiss them or disparage them or write them off because of the way they dress, the way they walk, the way they talk, their religion. But actions are a good way to judge people, or at least to give you the raw material to make wise decisions and judgments. How do I balance feeling-based emotion over judgment-based? I think that sentence has a bit of a problem. A feeling-based emotion. It's got one and two same things. I assume what you mean is, how do I balance the kind of the feelings that I have and the rational assessments that I make, and in making judgments? Is that perhaps what you mean? I was talking about this yesterday and saying that emotion can, as we know, very easily clouds judgment. It impairs judgment. If you're playing sport, for instance, if you have if you have a inferior team playing a superior team, and they've got this really good player on their team, and you're not good enough to stop them, what's the best thing you do? Make them angry. If you can make their star player angry and he loses his temper, then his form will decline. He starts making poor judgments. And a very simple, straightforward example of how emotion clouds judgments and clouds performance. But emotion has a constructive role. Yesterday I was talking about a study that was done of a man who had a serious car accident, and the area in his brain which is responsible for emotion was destroyed. So he became a completely kind of rational, what we used to say in my generation, Mr. Spock. This generation could have AI human being, so no emotion. And so the assumption, I think, is that person being without emotion would be very rational, very effective, very efficient. And yet that wasn't what happened. That without emotion, the person found it very difficult to prioritize anything. Like go to a supermarket and spend half an hour trying to choose between different brands of soap or toothpaste or something like this, because if you're going into these kinds of consumer goods, in a very rational way, there's no end to it, and the differences are insignificant. So this is an indication that emotion prioritizes and helps to choose, helps to support rational judgments. It kind of cuts things down, saves time. But if the emotion, as I say, cuts off the rational faculty altogether, and it's just, yeah, I want this because it's so pretty, or I want this one because it's more expensive than the others, therefore it must be better, something like that, then it's more dangerous and something to be aware of. Okay, good question. Monks can't be alone with women one-on-one. What if the monk is not straight? Yeah, that's... No, it's a good question, isn't it? First of all, I mean, a question before that is, can someone who's not straight become a monk? You see? And there are different views on this. So there's very conservative view is absolutely not. My standard, when I was accepting or not accepting standards for candidates for ordination, was if someone comes into the monastery and lives in the monastery, let's say for a year, wearing white, and they are able to live in an impeccable way and let go of their sexuality in the same way as a heterosexual, a straight person let go of their sexuality in order to lead the holy life, then the renunciation of sexuality is the point, not the kind of sexuality which is renounced. But in the case of someone who is not straight, they have to prove, it's almost not quite guilty until proved innocent, but certainly they have to really show that they can be around in an all-male community and not cause problems. In the case that a monk is alone with a man who is not straight, I mean, many times that's been the case with me, but it's generally it's not liable to cause gossip or for a loss of reputation. But if the layman in question, his behavior has been inappropriate in the past, then you would be very careful. So although there's not a rule, there's just common sense and mindfulness. You know, I'm not unsure about that person's intentions. Better not to be alone with that person. Certainly, mostly being alone would be like in a hall like this, rather than in an individual kuti. So we in monasteries, one of the things we from the time of the Buddha, there have been medicinal saunas. So even to this day, in forest monasteries, northern Thailand, there are saunas after the monks have been up all night the previous night, meditating through the night. Then it's often a monastery will have a sauna night, and it's often the case the younger monks will offer massage to the senior monks. But if there is anyone who has any, who is not straight or has any gay background, then they're not allowed that kind of physical contact with other men. So there are all kinds of rules, and you observe and you keep sight of what's appropriate and not appropriate in these situations. Brilliant, Ajahn. Different people have different versions of reality, which often results in conflict. How would we resolve this if after discussion parties still do not see eye to eye? Well, that's more often the case than not, isn't it? Because when people have ideas and beliefs about things, then they become kind of embedded in their whole way of their life and who they believe they are and they think they are. So there are very strong psychological reasons for holding on to beliefs, even if they are shown to be false. which is why the idea if someone's sort of caught up in a cult or some kind of really mistaken view about things, you just show them the facts and somehow the facts will set them free. They don't, because it's how you receive the facts, how you perceive the facts, how you fit the facts into your world as it exists already. So it's very difficult for people with strong views and opinions to get through to each other on a genuine basis. And if you're in a conversation with somebody who has very fixed views about something, and you feel like you're going around in circles, one thing you can ask the person you're talking to, is there any evidence that would make you change your mind? Is there anything I could say that would make you change your mind? And if that person says no, then you can just say, well, maybe we just call it a day. So it's a question of how useful is it to continue talking with someone who has absolutely no openness to dialogue, but just hoping to change your mind. But I so think that, well, from Buddhist point of view, it's not only what you believe and what your views or your perceptions of reality are, but how you hold them. And in Buddhist training, we're saying you don't hold on to views and opinions so tightly, because that is one of the kinds of upadana. It's a very insidious and difficult defilement. So if you have a view or an opinion, then you need to remind yourself, this is a belief, this is a view. It's not a vision of reality. It's an idea about reality. And we have to make a distinction between knowing something as a direct experience and believing in it or finding it reasonable or whatever. And that basic humility is, I think, the best attitude to take. You say, so somebody says, oh, you're a Buddhist, you believe in past lives. And you can say, well, I do, for a number of reasons. It seems to me, it makes sense to me from all I've heard, but I don't actually know. It's only a belief, you see, and that's where the humility comes in. Whereas for most people, like in most religions, there's a circular reasoning where you don't make a distinction between what you know and what you believe. So you say, I believe it. You say, well, why do you believe it? Because I know it's true. How do you know it's true? Because I believe it. I believe it because it's true, and it's true because I believe it. And then, those are the kind of people that there's no meaningful discussion. But you say, I believe it, but I don't actually know. But these are my reasons why I believe it. And then you can talk about those if you wish. How do I mold a good Buddhist ego? The word ego is a term coined by an Austrian psychotherapist 100-something years ago in Vienna, and I'm not sure it's a very intelligent or wise way of talking about human personality. I don't think there's any reason to speak in terms of ego, as Buddhists, certainly. But if we're talking about a firm foundation for spiritual growth, like a non-neurotic mind, then I will refer you to what I was talking about last night, the importance of dana and sila. So dana and sila and giving, sharing, being kind, keeping precepts, not hurting other people, not abusing other people, not taking advantage of other people, and looking after yourself, eating just as much food as your body needs at the right times, getting enough exercise, getting enough rest, practicing mindfulness. All these basic practices are giving you a firm foundation in life. But I personally, I don't like this idea of egos and molding egos and good egos and super egos and all the other associated terms. In the next 10 to 20 years, do you think religions will still be relevant? What would Buddhism be? I don't think, religions are kind of fads and fashions and things that change very easily at all. So you see the longevity of the Buddha Dhamma has been around for 2,500 years, and Christianity 2,000 years, Islam 1,000 and something years. I can't understand. I can't imagine any scenario in which people would not look to religion. And if we look at some of the predictions, from historians and thinkers 20, 30, 40 years ago, with the dawning of the internet and the idea of global village and interconnection, etc., then there's some very optimistic predictions that these kinds of very narrow and superstitious belief systems would kind of wither away. Quite why or how is never, I think, really made clear. But quite the opposite has happened. And there's been I would say, through internet and through the opportunities to connect with other people who have the exact same kind of weirdness as you do, and creating little realms of private realms of belief that superstitious, probably more superstitious these days than for a very long time in the past. But we have to also, why are there religions in the first place? People feel overwhelmed, they feel insecure, they're afraid, they're lonely, they know that going to die. And so people want to find a way of coming to peace with that and to be free of that dread and anxiety. And most religions give you a story. And there's a story about some heavenly being who loves you and cares you, who's got a plan for you, or you can have a personal relationship with him, and so on. And so it's a way of removing so much of the dukkha and the suffering that people feel by believing in a story or a narrative about the human situation. So where Buddhism differs is that Buddhism has us look into the problem itself, look into these feelings of fear and anxiety and insecurity and loneliness, and learn how to understand, learning about them, understanding them, and transcending them. So it's not about creating a story based on certain beliefs, but cultivating the ability to see the truth for oneself. So as long as there is human suffering, there will always be religion of one kind or another. And as religions have a great deal of inertia, then I would expect that in 20, 30 years, the religious landscape will be pretty similar to what it is today, although there might be within the belief system religions like Christianity and Islam, there might be some new kind of sects and cults that arise in response to climate change, in response to technological changes and so kind of reactions to them. Sometimes I wonder if I am living life the right way. In brackets, in parentheses, if there is even such a thing. How can I live with no regrets and fears that I feel I wasted my life at the end of it? Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the kind of question that it's important to ask. And what is the right way to live? This was what set me off on my journey into monkhood as a teenager. Now, what's the best way to live your life? This is a question that I gave great thought to, and it led to all kinds of other questions. As the author of this question said, is there even such a thing, or is there such a thing as a best way to live your life? Now, if you're making value judgments about material things, you have certain criteria, don't you? So let's say you're going to buy a telephone, you're going to buy a car, or you're going to buy something like this. So you have all these, what exactly do you want? So you have criteria. It might be price range, it might be physical appearance of a car, or speed, or luxury, or safety. Have all these, which are the important features for you? And then you may prioritize your features, and then maybe you go into a website or something and say, I want a car which is this, 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 and this, which is the best make and which is the best model. But can you do that with a life? Are there criteria? You can say, yeah, a good life, it needs to be like this, 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 and this, and not like this, 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 and this. And so this was what I was reading about and looking into, and my conclusion after finally reading Buddhist book was that a life devoted to practice of the Eightfold Path is the best kind of life in order to create happiness and welfare for myself and happiness and welfare for others. So I didn't, at that time, consider it in terms of becoming a monk, because I didn't even know that was possible at that time in my life, to become Buddhist monk in Thailand. But it was more the ideals and the values that I wanted to uphold and what I considered to be a good use of time. So for me, that finding ways of reducing greed, hatred, and delusion, and developing, cultivating wisdom and compassion and peace, that seemed to be like the best thing that someone could do with their life. And whether you were doing that within the framework of a career of some kind, or whatever way of life would enable you to pursue those spiritual goals in the best way. And as for myself, that led me to eventually discover monastic life, and think, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So how can I live the no regrets or fears? It's probably a difficult one, isn't it, to have no regrets at all? But it's taking responsibility for your life, and as I say, the path of Buddhist practice, aiming at one's own welfare and happiness, and the commitment to increasing the welfare and happiness of others. That would seem to me like a good way to live life. What are your thoughts on absolute selfless or free transactions? For example, giving without expecting something in return. Modern philosophy often discusses the invalidity of this, as even the most selfish acts of giving could still be a result of the subconscious implantation of the human mind to seek liberation and a cathartic emotion. Is this still self? Yeah, I would. I don't agree. There's more clever thinking by people who've never looked at their minds, never really seen what's going on in the human mind. They're thinking about the human mind rather than looking at the human mind. So there, I never went to university. I left school when I was 17 and worked on a building site and in a warehouse and made some money and went to India, and never really thought about it again. Never interested. And then in 1991, I got an invitation to teach some courses on Buddhist practice and meditation by a group in Northwestern University outside Chicago. And so I was in Chicago for a few weeks, and these were not like official. It wasn't official curriculum. It was arranged by the Buddhist Studies group of something or other. Anyway, I had a number of days where I had free time in the university, so I thought I'll just be a student and catch up, And so I got a list of all the talks and lectures that were going on, and I was interested in sociology. One of the main things. I went literature, English literature, history, sociology, or my kind of topics. And I went to listen to one or two of these lectures, and one was a real kind of revelation to me, because the lecturer was saying, now finally, after years and years, the influence of the behaviorists and so on and so forth, there is now a recognition that there may in fact be something called altruism. And so people have been going to university for like 100 years and being taught by all these top people that there's no such thing as altruism. I thought, thank goodness I didn't go after all. I might have. And this, applying these certain beliefs, materialist beliefs, and proclaiming all this, there's no such thing as selfless. It's like a selfish gene, the Richard Dawkins thing, or that we're conditioned by our past as hunter-gatherers. And you get people, even really smart people like Steven Pinker, whoever, if you know his work, every sort of thing, every feature of human life has to be related to something when we were living in caves or we were hunter-gatherers. And it's just such a brilliant intellectual exercise, but it falls to pieces, as I say, if you're just willing to look at your mind closely and really see what's going on in the human heart. So yeah, I don't have much time for that stuff. How do I stop procrastinating? Well, think about it. That's a joke. Okay. I think that one of the... I have another joke. My joke is, when I was young, I was an amateur procrastinator. And then as I got older, I became a real pro. But the point I want to make is that often with things that we don't want to do, we put off, we procrastinate. But there are a couple of, these are more like tricks, if you like, or techniques. One is, if there's something you really don't want to do, find another one that you'd really don't want to do. and then do the one that you least don't want to do. And then, so that's a kind of a trick. The other one is that if you make a agreement with yourself that something that you've been putting off, you will do for 3 minutes. Okay, it's going to take so long. It's such a boring, and so your mind is like brung dang, so like this. And you say, well, do it for 3 minutes. Can you do it for 3 minutes? And it's like jumping into a cold sea in England or something like that. It's like one of these things that the first minute, it's really tough, and then once you're in, it's quite nice actually. You just have to get over that initial bump. And so if you say 3 minutes, and if 3 minutes you can't do it, then you put it down. But nearly always when you schedule it and you do it for 3 minutes, once you're into it, then you find that you can carry on. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on with these questions because we only have today, and so many good questions. What are your thoughts on the new generation not being able to relate to chanting, even with its translation to Thai? Does it minimize the effectiveness, the benefit of it? Chanting is not like a crucial part of practice. It's more of a elective course rather than a compulsory part of the syllabus. But there are a lot of benefits to it, and if you recognize the benefits, then the interest will come of itself. With just chanting in Pali, the language is so beautiful, and making the pronunciation of the words, the precise pronunciation of the words, as your meditation object. So if you're finding a lot of restlessness, and you think it'd be a good thing to meditate, but it's just too restless, then chanting for a certain period of time can just calm the mind down and prepare it for meditation. There are a lot of chants in this book, these chanting books. You don't have to chant the same things every day. You can find different chants and find ones which have good meanings and uplifting for you. There are a lot of chants taken from teachings of the Buddha himself. Some are like poems and things which are based upon the Buddha's teachings. It doesn't mean if something is in Pali language that it's necessarily the words of the Buddha. Pali is just a language, and one of the real values of chanting is that when you chant in a group, it is the most rapid, effective way of creating a sense of harmony and group energy. This is why one of the few practices which is common to nearly all religious traditions is some kind of group singing, group chanting, singing hymns, chantings, because the energy where people are harmonizing their voices and chanting together really creates this sense of being a group all together. So on a Sunday morning, and here there are people come from Bangkok and from all over country sometimes, and some are regulars, and quite a lot of people are coming for the first time. But having half an hour of chanting right at the beginning, you just feel everything kind of settles down, and it's like a sense of a harmonious group. So it has a lot in favor of it. So a few years ago, I was speaking to a doctor from England, and he was doing some some study of physiological changes during Pali chanting. And he was really excited about for some reason, the particular configuration of vowels and consonants in Pali words and Pali chanting was having very calming effect on the bodies of the participants and measurable effects on heart rate and things like this. So I don't have that study to show you. A lot of practices can be kind of boring at the beginning. You persevere with them and come out the other end and you find that you really enjoy them after all. And if you learn some chants and you want to share something with your grandparents, go to go and tam wat chao, tam wat yen with kunya, kunyai, kunta, or then you mi kwam suk mak. So if you do it, it's like an act of giving, sharing with your elders. Very nice. I want to go to work and travel in Australia. But my mum and dad don't want me to go. How to convince them? Okay, so it's all on me. I am big fan and supporter of gap years. I think they're a really good thing. But if you are planning on some kind of adventure and your parents are against it, your first question is, why are they against it? And don't just kind of dismiss their arguments when you say, oh, it's dangerous. You hear what happened to that young girl on that island in 1981 or something like that, and that kind of arguments. And so don't dismiss their arguments. They're coming from genuine concern. So, you have a concern about my safety. Is that the main thing? So how can you put their minds at rest concerning your safety? Or maybe they have a fear that if you go off to Australia and then you like it so much you won't ever come back. So they're afraid that you're rejecting them or that you're leaving them behind, or else you're going to take a gap year and then you'll do something like Ajahn Jayasaro and never go to university at all. So the point I'm making here is try to find out what are your parents' concerns, and don't dismiss them because they'll often be quite genuine concerns. Take them seriously, and look into the way of addressing those concerns in a way that they can hear and a way which is acceptable to them. So, you have all your reasons and you may be convinced they're good reasons, but they're not necessarily reasons that your parents can hear and accept. So put yourself in their shoes and try to go from there. Okay, we're running out of time. How can I forgive someone who hurt me deeply? Even years pass, the wounds don't seem to get better. There's 3 questions. What does Buddhism say about dreams? I dreamt about a lottery number and actually won the prize. How does this work? And how to actually live a fulfilling life? How to make life meaningful? Okay, there's quite a wide variety of questions. Question number 1, forgiving somebody. Okay, so somebody, I think, begin with the whole question of forgiveness. What does it mean to forgive somebody? When you say you can't forgive somebody, what does it actually mean? Okay, I'm open for some. What does it mean to forgive somebody? Quickly, nobody have any idea? No more. What does it mean to forgive someone? Okay. Yes, it's not so easy. It's one of those words that we use a lot, and then one of the words that when you stop and think, what exactly do I mean by that? It's not quite so clear, and it says, and almost it's difficult for him to put into words. So I prefer to use the Thai word or the Pali word apai or apaya. So pai means like danger, apai means not danger. So hayapai means that you will not try to hurt that person because of what they did to you. That's what forgiving somebody means. It means, okay, you hurt me and I'm not going to hurt you back, whether it's physically or verbally. Now that I would say that is workable, it's doable. But if you say, I'm not going to feel bad, I'm not going to feel hurt by what you did, you can't just decide not to feel a certain way. You can't just decide to forget something. But what you can say is, I'm not going to make anything more out of this. But when someone has hurt you deeply, then you've learned a lesson, and you've learned something about that person, and you've learned something about yourself. But if someone has betrayed you in a certain way, then forgiving them doesn't mean that you start to trust them again. How could you do that? It would be foolish. That person has shown themselves to be deeply untrustworthy. So if somebody has betrayed your trust and they want your trust again, they have to earn it. That's their responsibility. So if you still feel some pain and hurt as something that someone's done, that's kind of normal. I mean, you don't want to be dwelling on it and come back to the same word again and again, brungtang, just thinking over and over, and then it never passes away. Just let that resentment and let that anger go. But the memory of it is not something you need to let go. But the forgiveness means that you're quite clear in your mind that you're not going to act in any ways to hurt that person because how they hurt you. You're not going to say things to cause them pain and make life difficult for them, and you're not going to sit and think bad things about them. Then that's my understanding forgiveness means. I dreamt about a lottery number and actually won the prize. How does this work? I don't know. It was in a dream. So I asked a monk once. He was some monks do this is their thing. Before the lottery, they go in retreat and they try to meditate and try to come up with a number, and then and that's their kind of dana. So I spoke to this monk, and I've been quite critical of this, and then monk in this very poor place, and he said, all the people who put food in my bowls, they're so poor, and there's nothing I can do for them. I look at them and I see their lives. I feel so much compassion for them. I don't give talks. I'm not a wise monk. I'm not any special in any way, and I don't. Nobody comes and makes big donations in the monastery that I could divert some of the funds to the local village, like some monks do. And then I thought maybe one thing I could do is if I could get the lottery number and tell them, then that would make their lives better. And that became his thing. Like, I lived with him for a while. Before he said, I won't be seeing you around in the next few days. It's my, it's my kamatan, just go trying to get the lottery number. And eventually he did. And he told me that he rang the bell in the little sala, and the people from the little houses. There wasn't actually a village. This was the people had no land rights. They were squatting on army land, and they all came and they said, "Finally, I've got something to share with you. This is so it's like the 3 numbers at the end of the lottery, not the whole thing. So it's just and he told them the number, but they don't have any money. You see, they're paid daily, so they get maybe those days. This is a long time ago now. Maybe 70, 80 baht a day, and that would all go on the meal, and so it's literally living day by day. And some of them had like 10 baht or 20 baht, and they all believed him, and they all went and bought, and they all won. And when I went to visit him again, there was one of the houses had a new Sangasi roof on it, but the real prize that came from it was a little portable TV. And in the evening, like Daitun, all the local kids would come around and watch TV on the lottery television that the family had won. So how does it work? I don't know. I spoke to another monk who's very, very successful at this, and he said it's not like a product of samadhi in itself, but tevada mabok. So, and that's pretty consistent for people who do have this kind of power. So I would say tevada kaufan konumotana. How to actually live a fulfilling life, how to make life meaningful. Can you decide from your yesterday topic? Yeah, I don't really have the time right now, but it's almost lunchtime. But for me, it's more a matter of asking the question. This is what one of the things I really liked about Buddhism is that's not telling you all the answers. It's saying, stop and really think about the questions that you need to ask yourself. And this, I think, are questions that, it's not like I'm going to give you all the answers and you take them away and you either accept them or reject them, but it's like, what does that mean? What does it even mean to have a meaningful life? What examples can you think of people whose lives you admire and you say, well, that's a meaningful life? What are the principles? What are the criteria? What could you do in your life? One very simple indicator that I mentioned yesterday, I think, is that feeling of pumjai. When you look back and what you've done today or what you've done in the last week, are there things you really feel like pumjai, in a good way? So, well, I may not be such a good person, I may do a lot of stupid things, but I've done that. And I stand by that, nobody can ever take that away from me. That's a good thing I did. That kind of feeling you should cultivate. To what extent should we believe in karma? So karma is, we talked about this. Excuse me. So, karma is volitional action expressed through body, speech, and mind. Action which has results which are in harmony with, consonant with the with the intentions that that cause the actions. So we can see certain elements, certain facets of the law of karma through observation and through of ourselves and of others. Example is habit. Is there something which is very difficult, but you keep persevering, and you can remove a bad habit and create a good habit. That's karma in action. Why does practice make perfect? Why is it that if you keep doing something that you can't do again and again and again, that you get better and better and better until you can do it? Why should that be? That is the law of karma. And that applies in the sort of physical level, moral level, in ways that we can recognize. So we have a belief in karma, which I would express more as a trust in the wisdom of the Buddha. Because karma is not restricted to a single lifetime. And we cannot trace all the karmic ingredients of our life. To what extent we are now dealing with the karmic effects of actions in last life or previous lives. So there's always this incalculable element, like the X factor, which we can't determine, can't distinguish. And so it's not, we can't do a simple causal analysis, or even to use a supercomputer and feed in all the causes and conditions of a single action in our life. Even with quantum computing or however brilliant it gets, we'll never be able to do that because there is input coming from past lives which is not measurable. So there's an extent to what we can measure. But with the teaching of the Buddha, he has given us so many teachings on so many different levels. And if you start putting these teachings into practice and looking into them closely for yourself, you can start to prove, oh yes, that's true. Oh yes, that's true. And over a course of time, like a longer life, like myself, just an endless stream of yes, that's so true. Oh, that's so profound. And the result of that is that you have a very strong confidence and trust in the wisdom of the Buddha. So when the Buddha talks about things that it's beyond your capacity to know as a direct experience, in this case the full profundity of the law of karma, then you trust the Buddha because his track record is 100%. He's never taught anything which you've been able to prove is incorrect. And so you give the Buddha the benefit of the doubt. But as I mentioned just now, you never forget that this is a matter of faith, of confidence, of trust. It's not a penetration of the full depth and profundity of the law of karma. So I'm going to have to leave it at this point. Maybe we might have a chance. Maybe if these can be brought to the afternoon session, and then if the Thai questions are over, I can answer this.